Constantinople, this use of mosaics. History and art in Florence, which is very much based on, because Venice and Ravenna and these places were on the water, that they were more influenced by that reflection of the water, so colors reflecting the water. So not only the influence from the East of opulent, beautiful materials, but also just the water, the nature of living near the water and the nature of reflection. So anyway, I was struck by these mosaics early on. I've always loved them. If you have the opportunity to go to Ravenna, it is truly a treat. These churches, Santa Apollinare, San Vitale, they are very humble looking churches from the outside, and then you go in and they're covered almost like it's covered with gemstones, but it's glass mosaic, but using gold leaf and extremely bright colors. So as you can see, of course, this is Empress Theodora, and that's why I wore the blue moonstone necklace I did today. It sort of reminds me of this feel. And, you know, looking at these patterns, you'll see in some of the jewelry I show you, these, you know, are reminiscent of, you know, emeralds, rubies. And at the same time, I'll show you some of these other pictures. Again, example of how the composition was all through color. There's not like they had to do, yes, there's a little outline. I love the emerald ring here, but it's mostly color. It's practically, you know, abstract painting. And yet, again, we're 6th century AD. Again, these patterns, a lot of this very exotic, sort of that Orientalism, but these were truly Oriental because we're talking empress and emperors, and you know, from what is now Turkey, and so extremely opulent, beautiful things. So here I go, young person, young woman working in Florence. After doing all my gold work, I started doing these pieces. You probably recognize these. These are some of my, and I set them up today. It was like, oh my gosh, these almost look like a mosaic. These days we're actually calling them, you know, the temple rings and things. These are some of my most signature settings. And these days, actually, I have one that is a personal one here on the table, the fantastic blue moonstone with Paraíba on the side. But this setting, in the late 80s, when I was first taken in by Barney's, the old Barney's on 17th Street, and it was really the beginning of their jewelry department, these were some of the pieces that I showed. And at the time, I referred to them as my Byzantine rings because they were directly influenced by those Byzantine mosaics. I had up on the table, I put these out. These are these fantastic powdered watercolors that I think I've mentioned to you. I use watercolors that I've gotten in Kyoto, but I kind of love to buy good paper and art supplies wherever I go. And these are actually from Venice. So they, again, too, sort of reflect all this crazy, crazy color. Recently, actually, we've introduced turquoise, which I've used in the past, but had this beautiful turquoise cut for these classic pieces. But anyway, these were my so-called Byzantine pieces. Now they've become very classic temple pieces. And they are a fundamental sort of signature part of my collection. And they're these pieces that each one, I talk about things of being limited edition. Now, we do very limited edition pieces within these where they're important gemstones, very one of a kind. But these pieces we do repeat, but again, because our stone buying is done so individually and so hand-picked, even if you get a pink tourmaline pair like this and this beautiful pair of cabochons, the next one will be equally beautiful, but it might not be exactly the same. And that's, again, that sort of beauty of natural gemstones. So moving on from there, again, back to nature deconstructed. And what is that? A few years ago, I don't know if I've really shown you what in the world my sketchbooks look like, but a few years ago, actually this particular sketchbook, sort of I named them, so Wiener Werkstatt, Wings of Desire. There were various things in here, but as you see, it's 2015. And I am a scribbler, and as you know, I'm a storyteller. But as I was looking at the jewelry this morning, I'm like, the jewelry tells a story too. Again, it goes from these beginnings of mine, looking at Byzantine paintings, and then in these, I was looking at early Vienna, and particularly the work of Gustav Klimt. And I don't know if you noticed, I'll show you again. I have kind of a kimono-like thing on today. Gustav Klimt was fascinated by the Orient. And he actually traveled, there's famous, just a cutout I have in here as a reference of his famous painting of the Kiss. And, he traveled often to Ravenna and Venice. And he loved those areas. And this is what fascinates me always, and I think I bring it up often in my jewelry storytelling, is the connection and inspiration, east to west. No one works in a vacuum, right? So if we go back over here a second, back to my books, I have a love of books, a love of travel, a love of storytelling. Bear with me a second. So I have this ridiculously large book of Klimt's work, and check this out. All right, we were looking at Ravenna, and then look at this. Gustav Klimt started using a great deal of gold leaf and almost mosaic pattern in all of his work after spending time in Ravenna. So I know we love Klimt. This is sort of an iconic painting that we all know. Actually, this one, if you haven't seen it, it exists. There's a lot of controversy over this painting because this belonged to the Bloch family. The Jewish families in Vienna right before the war were great patrons of the art, and Gustav Klimt painted many of the young women from those families, and they were great supporters of his art. And this one ended up in Vienna, and then through an incredible international law case, ended up back in this country. And we are very lucky to have it uptown at the Neue Gallery. And again, a call out to my friend Annabelle Seldorf, again, who designed the museum there that houses these works by Klimt. So this one is on permanent display there. And actually the Neue Gallery is one of my favorite places to go. But anyway, so Klimt, talking about sort of, again, look at, Byzantine mosaic, right? That influence. And also, if you look, what's really interesting too, to me, is that the women that he painted, he often put them in these kimonos and sort of very Eastern. There was a love of that Orientalism. And then there's also a little bit of an Egyptian influence. You see this eye shape. So that's right, there is a movie about the case, and there's also a fantastic book. I actually went to hear the author talk about the book before the movie came out. But yes, thank you for bringing that up. It's that's a good pandemic one. The Woman in Gold, I believe, right? So again, Klimt doing these very exotic paintings. So that took me back in looking at Klimt's work and going back to some of my Byzantine roots. I started working on this collection called Nature Deconstructed. Now, why Nature Deconstructed? Because some of the patterns that he works with and that they worked with in Byzantine mosaics, and these are some of my little musings of some of those patterns. You see sort of the eye pattern, but also it's kind of a natural pattern. And I think I put up on the Instagram, I do lookbooks for all my collections. So this was actually the work for the cover art. So I'm sort of channeling a little Klimt meets Byzantine mosaic, and the same with this deer on the back. But it's kind of looking at natural patterns in an abstracted form and then a more stylistic form. So that's something else that I see in the Byzantine mosaics. There's quite a bit of natural pattern there, and also in Klimt. So it's that idea of taking apart those patterns and reconstructing them. So I play with that in the jewelry, sometimes a little more specifically, sometimes a little more simply, but some of those themes. So if this were to be a trip through time of my jewelry, it would go from the Byzantine work to more recent Byzantine work, but even much more opulent. Let me move my shadow out of the way. I hope you can see that. I actually just 45 minutes before doing this, I dragged everything up here to the roof because I wanted to show you these colors. And I don't know if you can see it well, I hope so. But these are all different colored sapphires, a little bit of emerald, blue moonstone, and this too. And these just feel so mosaic-y to me. So it was an opportunity to sort of, play with that idea of mosaics, precious gems, precious color in these patterns, both for this necklace and then these earrings too. So within this collection, I sort of play back and forth between, very much Byzantine. In fact, I was almost going to write on the paper here, it's like, now we're in Ravenna, now we're in Vienna. And it's and then there's sort of a merging of the two. So some of these pieces too are from this collection. Again, sort of, I was thinking about mosaic, but also the style, the Orientalism and the style that Klimt, how he painted his models and what he had them wear. And in this particular piece, and let's see, can you see this one? So this earring too, you see sort of that eye shape that you see in some of the Klimt paintings. Again, multicolored sapphire with blue moonstone. Same here, of course, there has to be an amulet with every collection. So this is, and a lot of these pieces have the name Theo after Theodora from the Empress in the Byzantine mosaics. But again, sort of that eye pattern that we used for this amulet and multicolored sapphire. And another piece of mine, actually I'm wearing the earrings today from this. These are little cartouches. Now, it's a different shape than you're used to seeing from me, but again, it's going back to that Orientalism. These are a little bit of an Egyptian, well, they are an Egyptian motif. The cartouche is given a French name, but I forget the ancient Egyptian name for these, but a cartouche was like an amulet, an amulet, a charm, a talisman, but with a special purpose, as I hope that all amulets may have. These, in the days of the ancient Egyptians, had little symbols and names, and really they were only used by the pharaohs. But my cartouches have multicolored sapphire and blue moonstone. This little one, just with blue moonstone. But I love these. I think they're a really fun, beautiful shape, and they're beautiful layered with other amulets and pieces like that. So those two, again, come from sort of that Orientalism and exotic feeling that exists both in the Byzantine work and in Klimt's work. Then as we make our way, actually I'll go all the way over here to the end of the table. And it's so bright in here. I hope that you're able to see and hear me well. But so over in here, you'd have to vote. It's like, am I in Ravenna or am I in Vienna? But it's definitely a merging of the two. So these are the Theo cuffs. And again, sort of a very mosaic-y feel, a very sort of rich, exotic feel. These have cutout patterns in them, beautiful gold work. And these are among what I've referred to as some of my limited edition pieces. There's a wider and a more narrow one. And again, a mix of sapphires. Let's see, I put it in the sunshine here. sapphires. This red right here is actually red spinel, which has been so difficult to get our hands on. So some of the pieces have the red spinel, and after that I'm using a little blue sapphire or emerald, depending. So that's one thing that makes these limited edition, is that every stone composition is slightly different. And of course, each one is done one by one. These are the only two in existence at the moment. So the Theokos, definitely a merger of Ravenna and Vienna. And again, you start to see, because I'm going to go over, and you're still probably going, well, why does she call it nature deconstructed? Again, some of these lines, I'll explain more to you as we get into some more of the abstracted nature details, but some of these lines and little shapes here, there's a water element, and almost, I didn't think about this before, but if you see, certain representation even in Egyptian hieroglyphics, which also was a great interest in the late 19th century, early 1900s, some of these symbols in here for water. And then these two, exquisitely simple, elegant, beautifully executed. These are the Theo pendants. And of these, there's a small and a large. And I no longer have these with the spinel. So as you see here, this has emerald and this has blue sapphire. And these are made by some wonderful goldsmiths that I work with, not in Florence, but outside of Milan. So just wonderful work. And these kind of come together with my early gold work and my early use of color, for Byzantine color. But again, this is sort of a going back to my roots, but bringing it to a new height, a new level. These look like I could have borrowed them. So these are very Theodora. So these drops, these are, let me see if I can hold them so that they focus well. Theodora drops with little detail of gold, and then again the multicolored sapphire and blue moonstone. Now I hope the light is good. I like being up here on my roof. My only problem is I can't see the messages very well, so please excuse me if I'm not jumping to answer questions. It's hard for me to actually see the comments. Anyway, so one more incredible bracelet that I think, again, tell me, vote, is it Ravenna or is it Vienna? But incredible execution. This is back to Florence. I love the detail underneath for this one. Completely articulated. And I love this kind of bracelet where once it's closed, it's kind of somewhat rigid, but with a little bit of articulation. So I'll show that one up close. And this one is also multicolored sapphire and then lined with blue moonstone on either end. And this one too, you've got, some of those shapes, definitely shapes and motifs. And this is a one and only. So many of our pieces, they go with any collection I do sort of our, some pieces that might be more repeatable, and then some that qualify as high jewelry. And this would certainly be a high jewelry piece. And another bracelet that I am so very fond of in this collection. So this one, I think I remain fully in Vienna. There's something so super chic, turn of the century, elegant. You'd wear this to have your cultural salon in the evenings and get all your best, creative friends over to contemplate beautiful things. And one interesting thing about this bracelet, very interesting to you gem lovers out there, this is actually zoisite. And zoisite is tanzanite. But tanzanite, we call tanzanite when it is heated to that purpley blue color that we know and love. But the fascinating thing about this is that these gems are natural. They came out of the ground this way. I mean, of course, they were cut and faceted, but the color is natural. Whereas most tanzanite that comes out of the ground is sort of a yellowy, brownish color, and then has to be heated to be made, that beautiful purpley color. So this one, if you can see, the inside is as wonderful as the outside, has many of our sort of Klimty details and swirls. So this one is a true favorite. And actually, I have to go back to the Klimt book. I have to show you a painting that I was aware of. Oh, this one. I opened this page today, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this painting is this bracelet. And so again, that's sometimes, where I go. And again, this morning I got up today and I'm like, what am I going to talk about today? And then I'm like, oh gosh, I don't know. I'll probably keep you all on all afternoon. But I just thought this was spectacular, right? Anyway, so then back over in this world. So more towards the real nature deconstructed. Oh, I have to show you one thing more in the Klimt book for this to make perfect sense. So look at this pendant for a moment. This is called the Campo dei Fiori, or flower field pendant. And you see it has, again, most of this collection was multicolored sapphire, and then some little sort of river, water running through it, little details that could be, this could be an abstract painting of a river. If you imagine the flow of a river and the water flowing around, certain little rocks and pebbles shimmering from the wet. So let me show you something else about Klimt that is pretty fascinating. So he's most known, of course, for these portraits, but he did a lot of landscapes and a lot of paintings of nature. Actually, this is a funny picture of him out, like in a kimono or something, wandering through the fields near his house or something. But I read at one point that he used to take some sort of lens, and he would look at his garden, his flower garden, through this lens that would kind of, really abstract what he was looking at. So it's somewhat, impressionistic, but that is how he did his work for his landscapes and his nature drawing. So, and if you've ever seen, I'm sure they're in this book, I find them, some at the, I see this wonderful tree trunk in here. I think this is a detail from a bigger painting. But yes, this painting, how there's in Italian called sort of a sfumatura, this sort of tone that gets a little bit hazy. You see it here too. And apparently that was a very particular thing he was doing, looking through a lens. And actually, while I'm at it, I have to take you back to Vienna one more time if I can find it, and talking about the idea of, here it is, sfumatura. Look what they were able to do. Now, this is in mosaic, and I'm sure he looked at this too. But look at these greens, just by placing these different, light color and green, and how they actually created the depth of perspective within this geometric pattern. Again, we're talking 6th century. It's just blows my mind. So anyway, so coming back over here, thinking of that idea of a flower field, and that's what this piece is about. This piece is the flower field pendant, and inspired by that idea of maybe squinting your eyes and looking into a beautiful field of color and flowers. Perhaps there's, water there, and coming up with this sort of abstract pattern of what you see. And that's what's meant to be captured in this piece. And so these next few pieces, actually refer very much to natural things, and yet they are abstract. This is the amulet in this area is called the river amulet, and it too has these little patterns running through, and it's actually on what we call the river chain, which is a wonderful chain done just for this collection. And I was just talking about that the other day. I don't know if you're familiar with our chains. I'm very proud of our chains, I must say. You know, we make all of our chains, and nothing is off the shelf except, I must say, our ball chains. We do offer those with our angels, but all of our link chains are all custom designed and made. And this is a particular beauty. And some chains like this, they're beautiful on their own, or again with a pendant. So it completely matches and goes with the flower field pendant or the river amulet. Then also within this group, talking about rivers still, there are 3 bracelets. I only have 2 of them here, but these 2 there's something so simple about these, and you see them and you're like, oh, they're cast with little patterns, but it's not true at all. So there are 3 of these. There's one straight one, you see the straight sides, and then there are 2 that are more wavy. And in fact, they're called the river wave bracelets. Now these go back, sort of my love of gold and fine gold work. These go back to my incredible goldsmiths in Florence. And each of these little elements is individually put on. So when because you could never achieve the finish here, the sort of satin finish under the polished elements through casting. You'd never get clean, beautiful work that we demand at Temple St. Clair. So these are true treasures. And again, they go back to some of those patterns that you see in the mosaics, that you see in Klimt's work. And think again, for me, I hope you all had the experience of hiking in a river stream where the river sort of shapes the bank, and then there are stones in the middle of the stream. There are particularly maybe some little outcroppings of vegetation, and this whole incredible pattern is created. And so that's what we were trying to capture in these bracelets. So as I say, there are 3 bracelets, and they kind of nestle together, or they can be worn singly. And there's also this really, really fun band that captures the saints. Wavy on one side, straight on the other. And, sometimes I had some clients that were with me in Florence last September, and they were seeing some of these literally on the bench in Florence. And the appreciation for how these things are made, because again, I emphasize, slow jewelry. And that's certainly, these are the epitome of that. And within this group, there are also some beautiful little earrings. This is the Isola earring. So literally, this is the island earring. So again, this is what might be. You might be hopping from one of these to the next as you're walking through a stream. This little shimmering rocks as the water goes around. And then these little drops also from this group that are reminiscent again of some of the shapes in the mosaics and in Klimt's work. So I think that pretty much takes you through most of the jewelry, but again, I want to just take you through, some of the drawings. As you know, I do a lot of watercolors, and I realize I have so many unfinished watercolors, I better get to it. But, I do a lot of these to use in the booklets that I make. We do these booklets for all the collections, and they're I don't know, it's just another fun project. This is all stuff that I just love to do all day long. These are some of the one-of-a-kind pieces. As you see, there's that drawing, made it into the book. And again, the little eye pattern next to this beautiful bracelet. So there you have it. That kind of explains nature deconstructed. And I'm going to try to turn around. I'm going to see if I love my booklets. Thank you so much. Again, because it's so sunny up here, it's a little hard for me to see. I'm going to flip back to me. Hello. And I'm going to take you back outside again. And I have to show you, I'm actually wearing the cartouche earrings. I don't know if you can see that, if I'm showing my ear or something else. But I love these. So, and they're mismatched. So they have different sapphires on each ear. And there's the cartouche pendants, which I just love. So I'll take you back outside again, and then I will wish you well. There's a bird. Keep waiting for, my mom actually sent me that hummingbird feeder, and I've heard from friends that I believe one friend, Claire, is online, and her hummingbirds have made it to Connecticut. I've never had a hummingbird here, but I'm going to try. But anyway, this is my little sanctuary up here, and particularly being in New York, I can't see you because of the light, but you can see me. Being in New York during this period of time, I mean, this has been, I feel so fortunate to have this space out here, and I try to spend as much time up here as I can. So, and I'm trying to construct nature up here. I actually, one more anecdote and then I will let you go, but things are coming up in these planters behind me. Years ago, I got a list of plants that they grow on the High Line. And on the High Line here in New York, they have to be very drought resistant. They did sort of indigenous drought resistant plants. So I got a list of those plants, and they're mostly pollinators. So hopefully they'll attract lots of bees and things, which I do get a lot of big fluffy bumblebees and things. And this is kind of like, I'm not a gardener, but somehow if you pick things that want to be there, they just thrive. So this is, is a great joy out here. So anyway, I will say goodbye for now. I do have one thing I want to let you know is that next week I'm going to have another guest on. I'm getting all my talented friends, dragging them out to Instagram Live. And next week I'm very excited because my dear friend Nancy Lorenz, who is a wonderful artist, and she and I did a collaboration when I did the Golden Menagerie. She did most incredible boxes for all of the pieces, for 9 pieces of mythical creatures. So she is working in her studio these days in New York. We're going to connect while she's at her studio. And I'm very excited because I just love her work so much, and I want to see what she's up to. And I think we may actually use the time for another little collaboration that we want to do. And then she has an Italian connection that I want to bring to the light and tell you all about, or have her tell you about. So anyway, that will be next Wednesday at 1. And thank you so much. I really appreciate everybody tuning in, and please send me your thoughts and ideas and questions, and if there are other things in particular you want to hear about, certainly let me know, and I'm happy to share. Thank you so much. I have to go in with you again so I can actually see how to say goodbye. There you go. All right.